And welcome into the first ever episode of the CK Nation post-game show. Matt George from Sports 1140 KHTK. You know this guy from everything Cowbell Kingdom. It's Leo Biez. Leo, it's great to be here in the Golden One Center.
It's great to be here. I am super excited to have and produce this show every single home game.
Right, and we're really...
Even though we lost.
Yeah, and a loss, win does not matter. We're always going to bring it to you. We're going to bring as much honesty and as much integrity to these broadcasts as we can. We're also going to really just talk about the pros and cons of every single game because there's going to be a lot of them. And there were a lot of pros tonight despite the loss. There also were a lot of cons, and we will definitely get into it, but we can't start off without anything less than just the atmosphere in this building tonight. One of the major questions for me was the one thing I loved the most about Arco Arena besides its history was how loud that building got. And I got worried because of how much more open the Golden One Center is that maybe it won't get as loud. I was wrong. This place was rocking early.
It was rocking. You had Ben McLemore, Matt Barnes say after the game that it was really a playoff atmosphere.
Right.
Rudy Gay said that as well. Those are good things when, you know, some of the leaders of this team are saying things like that.
And Coach Yeager opened up his post-game conference saying how the guys were, even on last night's flight, they were so fired up to play this game because they knew, one, the new building was going to be fantastic, and they knew that crowd was going to show up, and boy, did that crowd show up. I mean, even hours before, the doors opened 2 hours before game time at 5:30. Even then, people were already flooding in. There was a bunch of people all over the concourse. This was the place to be tonight, and I feel like it's going to be that way for almost every single night here in Sacramento.
Absolutely. One, because the city fought so much to keep this team.
Right.
And now that you have a state-of-the-art arena, and in my opinion, because I've been to the Boston Garden, to the Barclays Center last season, and that was the newest arena before this one. It doesn't compare to it, man. It just doesn't. This arena blows those two arenas by a long shot.
Well, see, and we are trying to do our job while the game's going on, just analyzing, tweeting, and trying to follow the game. But there were moments, I don't know if it happened with you, Leo, but there were moments where I sat back, usually during a dead ball, and I just looked around and realized I'm not in Arco Arena. This is in Sacramento. I'm not on the road. This building belongs to Sacramento. And just that thought, it's going to take some getting used to, but it's just such an incredible relief and a feeling, just you can't describe it.
That's exactly how I felt when I just stood in the middle of this arena and I was telling our photo editor, Emmanuel, like, hey, dude, this isn't... Right now, we're in Sacramento.
Right.
I kid you not. Like, we are in Sacramento, and this is state-of-the-art. It's just a magnificent arena.
Well, let's talk about the game a little bit because the Kings actually got off to a great start. About 32 minutes of this game, the Kings controlled from the very beginning. The Spurs didn't have more than a 1-point lead, and they only had it for, maybe 10 seconds in the early going, and the Kings were in control for the most part. The defense was good. It was spotty at times. At halftime, both teams were shooting at 51%, but the Spurs had taken significantly less shots than the Kings had. The Kings were just doing a good job making every look very, very difficult, and the Kings were also doing a great job getting to the line. But, you know, with the loss tonight, we found out one thing for sure. We found out a lot of little things, but one thing for sure. Kawhi Leonard is legit. And that guy, I mean, I picked Russell Westbrook to be my MVP this season because I think he's going to be incredible. But if there's anyone that can give him a run for his money, if Kawhi Leonard keeps playing like this and stays under the radar, sky's the limit for this guy. And like we're going to hear a little bit later from some of the players, I think it was Matt Barnes that said, you know, this team's in really good hands when Tim Duncan left if Kawhi Leonard is going to be this ace in the hole.
He said that Kawhi Leonard is the best two-way player in the league, and I think the closest guy to him is Klay Thompson,
right.
And he's not on that level. Because Kawhi Leonard's points, most or a lot of them come from steals, like tonight where he had, I think, the play of the game when he stole Ben McLemore's dribble drive or dribble pass twice, and he just took it the other way, and one of them, Ben McLemore, fouled him. It was a McLemore play because he should have never fouled him. He should have just let him go. And then the second one, and back-to-back possessions, man.
Right.
So that's unacceptable. You know, those are things that you have to learn as you get better and as you get equated as a team.
You know, we knew from the last couple of seasons that Kawhi Leonard was a defensive threat, and we've always known the defensive game was really, really strong with him. Now he's starting to come into his own offensively as he takes that role on, and if you just look at the numbers for him tonight, he finished with 30 points. I didn't realize he scored that many, but he did score 30 points. A very efficient shooter. He also had 5 assists, so he was distributing the ball, but I mean, the stat you were talking about, 5 steals, 2 of them back-to-back steals against Ben McLemore. That really was the change in this game, and I was talking to a bunch of members of the media tonight, and we all pretty much agreed the San Antonio Spurs just have this switch that they flip. And I don't know if it's Popovich that switches it. I don't know if it was Kawhi that switched it tonight. But all of a sudden, this switch comes on, and this team decides to hunker down. We are going to win this game. There's no chance we're losing it. And we saw that in the turnover category, which was the big difference towards the end. The San Antonio Spurs turned the ball over 1 time in the final 16 minutes of play. Or actually, more than that, the final 17 minutes of play.
And it was
it was literally at the very end of the game with a shot clock violation because there was 0.2 seconds between the shot clock and the game clock. So really, they didn't turn the ball over at all in the fourth quarter and half of the third quarter. That's incredible, and that's what great teams do. And the Kings, unfortunately, got sloppy with the ball. Their offensive game slowed down, turned into too much isolation, and that was the difference in this game here tonight.
Most definitely, Matt. That was a difference because in the first half, you had all these players with so much energy playing defense, and in the second half, I'm not going to say they didn't put all the effort in there.
Right.
But it wasn't all the way there where how it was in the first half, and it showed tonight. Yeah,
so Kawhi Leonard is legitimate. We know that now, and I mean, he's making a stamp on the league, at least in these first 2 games. What the Spurs did to the Warriors was fantastic. They battled back from behind for most of this game, but flipped that switch, which we knew they are capable of doing. So they are 2-0, and more looking like still legitimate contenders, even though of their age, and even though they lost Tim Duncan, does not matter with this team. There's something magical in Greg Popovich's locker rooms, and he just is able to put these teams together, and it blows my mind.
He finds D-League players and he makes them good.
One of the questions that I asked, Jason Jones didn't take too kindly to it because he said, who cares? It doesn't matter because he's on the Spurs right now. But if a team like the Sacramento Kings, or maybe a team that, if a team that's not Greg Popovich, if they draft Kawhi Leonard, is he half the player that he is today?
I don't think so. I don't think he would be as good offensively because the Spurs groomed him into a system where he didn't have to dominate from the start. He had the best power forward to ever live to actually watch him play and watch him lead. And when Tim Duncan passed down the torch, Kawhi was ready. And that's what Matt Barnes said to them.
We're going to hear from Coach Yeager and some of the players here in just a second, but right before we do that, the last thing I want to touch on, Leo, because I think it's a glaring issue, especially down the stretch, is with the exception of DeMarcus Cousins, the Kings really don't have a go-to scorer down when the Kings need a big bucket from behind. Defensively, we know they can hold their own, so if the Kings have a 2 or 4 point lead in the final minute and a half, you can expect the defense to hunker down, but if the Kings are trailing by 4, 6, 8 points and need to come back, where's that scoring going to come from? We saw a 5-point spurt from Aflalo that lit this crowd up. One of the loudest defensive chants I've ever heard. And you got good production out of Ty Lawson, who actually he was phenomenal on the defensive end, and we'll talk about that too. But just where is that scoring going to come from? Rudy Gay finished with 17 points tonight, but it really was a quiet and inconsistent 17 points. So the scoring is a concern for me. I don't know how you feel about that.
It is, but just like Aflalo said after the game, great defensive teams will always be in a game.
Right.
And, playing great defense will always give you a shot to win a game. And I'd rather have that than a team that lives and dies by the jump shot, like the Blazers, like the Warriors, like all these other teams that play small. So I'm okay with that because I feel like the Kings are setting their identity every single night, and that's a defensive identity. That's a grit and grind, kind of like the Memphis Grizzlies. So if they continue to play this good defensively, they'll be fine, and they'll be in every single game, just like tonight. Because that 8-point lead wasn't really a true indication of the actual game.
And there's something to be said about the crowd cheering for the Kings every time they held the Spurs to a 7-second shot clock and the Spurs had to force up a tough shot. There was no shortage of effort tonight from the Sacramento Kings, which is something we really haven't seen on a 48-minute basis. And for the most part, I think 45, 46 minutes was solid effort from the Kings. Their lapses were maybe because of fatigue or because of just mental issues in their youth, not necessarily because they weren't giving the effort, which is a very, very positive sign. And the crowd definitely appreciate the defense tonight. But why don't we hear from Coach Dave Yeager, who spent a couple minutes talking to the media, and really, despite the loss, he was in a very positive mood and was really willing to joke with some of us in the media. Let's have a listen.
Other than DeMarcus Cousins, are you worried where the scoring comes down the stretch?
Oh, yeah. Coach, no, I mean, it's Rudy closed for us last night. Rudy and DeMarcus, took it home. And push that thing out, and then they could get off the floor the last 3-4 minutes of the game. Kawhi Leonard's, he's a handful, at both ends of the floor, very physical, and so you got to give him some credit for the work that he does defensively. And Rudy got a couple quick fouls, and I got to find a way to get him some better looks. But I'm impressed that anytime Rudy can get 10 free throws, 12 free throws, that's good for us too. So. I got to do a better job of getting him the ball in some spots.
I tweeted out after Coach Yeager finished his press conference that, and you can tell from that video, he's very refreshing. And he's someone that even though he lost the game, he's not pointing too many fingers. He's accepting responsibility. He knows the players are accepting responsibility as well. He's showing pride. He's showing positives, also addressing negatives. It's just really refreshing to have a head coach that really has his head screwed on straight. Not that Carl or other coaches in the past haven't, but he just knows the right things to say. And I left that press conference feeling more confident than I did with the Kings' late struggles.
That's why I'm so confident that this team will make the playoffs, because they have a guy at the helm that's so confident, that's so genuine. And when you have a head coach that's so genuine, you want to go to war with him, and you will do everything you can to fight for this guy. Last year, he was crying at his press conference.
Right.
That tells you the type of person that Dave Yeager is.
Right. Yeager he bleeds this game, he loves this game, and crying, smiling, he is all about the game of basketball, and it really, really shows. And I think I know the players are buying into it, and they completely respect it. Let's hear from some of the players now. First, we're going to hear from Mr. Ty Lawson, who was surprised by his own defensive ability, and it's really been a bright spot. Here, take a listen.
Ty, you came into the league with a reputation as an offensive player, but your defense last couple of games has been spectacular.
Not gonna lie, I noticed myself. I'm like, yeah, I'm playing a lot better defense. Getting down, getting my feet moving. So, coach, has a way to motivate people to be a better defensive player.
So Ty Lawson definitely making strides in the right direction. We knew he was a great player on the offensive end. Such a quick feet. His first step is one of the quickest in the game. I mean, you can rotate and stop him because he's not that big. But God, to be an on-ball defender on him, trying to stay in front of him when he gets that jab step out, you're done. It's very, very difficult.
I said this during the game. Ty Lawson is the real deal, and I told you in our little area, Ty Lawson is back, Matt. And I know it's 2 games, but his speed is back. That's why he's been so effective throughout his career. His speed kills. And Yeager, after the game, said that he needs to get him more in transition because he's still trying to get acclimated to this high post offense.
Right.
Where he's more loose. He doesn't have the ball much in the half court set because the offense is running through DeMarcus Cousins.
Right.
So he has to learn how to play that way. But you also have to let the kid run because that's where he's best at.
And we're going to talk about this a lot more on the Cowbell Kingdom podcast, which we're going to do tomorrow night, really recapping these first 2 games of the season, also previewing the Minnesota Timberwolves, that game on Saturday that's going to be here in this building before the Kings go on a long road trip. But one of the things we're definitely going to address there is a question that popped into my mind about 3/4 of the way through this game. When Darren Collison comes back, the way Ty Lawson has been playing, do you take Lawson out of that starting lineup or do you keep him in there? We'll see. We'll address that later. I know we want to both address it now, but a little stay tuned or be sure to listen to the Cowbell Kingdom podcast hosted by myself and Leo. Again, that will come out probably sometime tomorrow evening or tomorrow afternoon. So definitely look forward to that. How about we go back into the locker room? Let's hear from Rudy Gay. He had some great things to say about this Sacramento Kings atmosphere, and then he also had some great things to say about the guy he was stuck guarding, Kawhi Leonard.
I mean, it was a big night for everybody. Us playing in front of the fans and and for the fans. I mean, this is a lot. You know, this is a new era of basketball in Sacramento. It was good to be a part of it. Obviously, the fans drive us to a new level. You know, this is a playoff atmosphere, and that's, you know, it's good to have that night in and night out.
Rudy, that battle with Kawhi tonight, what did you make of that? Were you pleased with the defensive effort you gave?
Well, yeah, I think I was. I mean, the thing about him, he works hard. He works hard for his buckets. You know, I think his defense is really what gets him most of his points. So, you know, he's a competitor, and I like playing against competitors.
So Rudy Gay, a bunch of praise for Kawhi and a bunch of well-deserved praise for Kawhi Leonard. Also a guy that had high praise for Kawhi is Matt Barnes, and let's hear what he had to say.
Oh, man, he's it. You know, but to me, he's the best two-way player in the game, obviously. And, you know, with offensive game, his defensive game, he's the leader of that team. You know, so Tim left it in good hands. But, you know, we got a hell of a center on our team, too.
I mean, Barnes is absolutely correct in what he said right there was that he talks about, you know, like you mentioned earlier, Kawhi is one of the best, if not the best, two-way player in the game, and he showed it tonight. The question was his offense. Again, 30 points tonight, had a great offensive showing against the Golden State Warriors. This guy could be a future, or if not current, MVP.
Was he 11 for 21 tonight?
It looks like it. Yep, 11 for 21, 1 from 5 from three-point range, 7 of 7 from the free throw line.
This guy's a stat filler.
Yes, he is.
But he's not like a Rondo stat filler, and I'm not taking a cheap shot by any means.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just saying this guy can do it all. And as you said, I wouldn't be shocked if he wins MVP this year.
Well, we're talking a lot about his contributions in the second half because he kind of took over the game. Actually, he really took over the game. But in the first quarter, at the very beginning, he was the only one scoring because the fact of the matter is the San Antonio Spurs got absolutely zero out of Tony Parker tonight. Tony Parker was non-existent. Patty Mills did well coming off the bench, and that's what the Spurs team does so well is when one of your guys isn't having a good night, the rest of the team picks him up, and they did that for Tony Parker. LaMarcus Aldridge was also non-existent until the fourth quarter. He decided, hey, I'm actually going to start scoring, and that's what good teams do. Doesn't matter how bad of a game you have, when it matters most in crunch time, they get what they need. They get that contribution out of LaMarcus, but Kawhi Leonard definitely carried the load here tonight, and he deserves all the props in the world.
On that note, though, you have to give credit to Ty Lawson.
Oh, absolutely.
Because that's a major reason why Tony Parker struggled early.
For sure.
Because he was on him.
Mm-hmm.
When I mean on him, he was on him. And that's something that Dave Yeager has been preaching to him, to Darren Collison, to even the young Isaiah Cousins. And I think that's a great example for Isaiah Cousins watching from the bench. Well,
defensively, I tell you, one of the biggest bright spots that I've seen over these first two games is just the defensive rotation. I mean, it's full effort from these guys. It's not, I'm going to take one step and put my hand up. It's, I'm jumping out and I'm putting my hand in your grill or I'm getting low.
I'm in my stance.
Exactly.
Like, this team is just day and night of what we saw last year, man.
And how much of a difference is it to see guys like Rudy Gay not just step out, but athletically make that jump out and just put in that extra burst or that extra effort? It might use more energy, but it makes a big, big difference. And we saw a lot of times, that was one of the reasons why the Spurs really weren't able to get going early on, is because even though they were getting decent looks, Manu Ginobili was getting a lot of good looks from outside, but he had a hand in his face almost every single time. And Manu can make those shots anytime he wants, but it just makes it a little bit more difficult mentally when you know that hand is in your face and you know that defender's coming at you, and the Kings were doing that all night long tonight.
And for all the fans who have been big critics of Rudy Gay's defense, Rudy Gay is beginning to play defense, and he's silencing a lot of fans because we ran an article yesterday talking about how good he is statistically. Like, I had no idea how Rudy Gay, statistically, in my opinion, is the best defender at the small forward position, no question about it, because he has the length, he has the athleticism. It's just a matter of effort now. And as I stated, if he doesn't put effort out there, Coach Yeager will bench him because he has depth. He has Omer Caspi, who didn't even play tonight, I think.
No, it didn't play a single second.
And then you have Matt Barnes. So trust me, if he does not put the effort every single night, he will not see much minutes.
Rudy Gay was charged with a tough task tonight of guarding Kawhi Leonard, and people are going to look at that stat line and see 30 points and say, Rudy did not do a good job. Well, I love what Coach Yeager said in that press conference. He said Rudy battled. He really battled against Kawhi Leonard, who just made some incredible shots. Kawhi made a lot of really, really difficult shots, and he attacked the basket. And I think very early in the game, he hit a circus shot. It was like his second made bucket of the game. And I turned to whoever was next to me, and I said, there's no such thing as circus shots when you're that good. I mean, mean, it's a good shot when you're that good, and Kawhi Leonard is that good. So a lot to appreciate from him. It's pretty safe to say Kawhi Leonard is both of our unanimous player of the game tonight. His performance, phenomenal. Again, 30 points, 5 assists, 5 steals, and then the plays of the game tonight, which we'll be currently showing you, just those 2 steals that Kawhi got on Ben McLemore, and that was what changed the game. From that point on, the Kings were battling back from behind. They made a little bit of a run late, but you're right. It pretty much was over. Aaron Aflalo did all that he could. DeMarcus Cousins did all that he could, but it just wasn't there. Again, the Spurs flipped that switch, and that's all she wrote.
That's all she wrote, man. And I don't have much to add to that, because that's what great teams do. And we have to harp on that and just give this team credit. They've been doing it for so long, for 19 years, man.
Yeah.
And you can't say much. The Kings held in tough. Rudy Gay's, admitted this team's been together forever, even though they don't have a Tim Duncan. But tip your hat off to them, man.
We will be back in here on Saturday night for Kings and Minnesota Timberwolves, a matchup I'm really looking forward to because I love the depth and I love the personnel that is on that Timberwolves team. So much youth, so much excitement. I'm excited to see Chris Dunn. I'm also anxious to see Mr. Ricky Rubio, who was an element and may still be an element in Kings trade rumors. I expect him to start, although I expect Chris Dunn to play a good amount of minutes, seeing as he's the point guard of the future for Minnesota. You also got Karl Anthony Towns, Andrew Wiggins, just a lot to like. It'll be a tough test for the Sacramento Kings, but I think based off of tonight's effort, they are up to the challenge. But unfortunately, they do lose their home opener. A phenomenal night, a not-so-phenomenal result. The final score, 102-94 in favor of the San Antonio Spurs. Your Sacramento Kings are 1-1 on the season. The Spurs improved to 2-0. No surprise there. For Matt George, I am Matt George. For Leo Biez, we thank you so much for joining us here on the first ever CK Nation post-game show. It's been a blast. We look forward to having you with us every single home game or after every single home game. Share it with your friends. Join the conversation as well online, on Twitter, on Facebook. We see it all. We read it all, and we love to hear it. Again, the Cowboy Kingdom podcast is going to be tomorrow, and expect that once or twice a week. We're always bringing to you as much Kings knowledge as we have. Leo, anything to add before we wrap up here?
Thank you guys so much for all the support. I had about 3-4 fans today say, hey, Leo, you and your team are doing a great job on Instagram, on all social media platforms. That means so much to me, guys. Thank you guys so much.
For those who made it out to the game tonight, you were fantastic. You were loud, and we loved seeing you out here. For those who watched the game from home, you're just as awesome and mean just as much to us and to this team. The support is incredible in this city, which, of course, we expected. So, for the last time, for Leo Biez, my name is Matt George. Thank you so much for joining us. This has been the CK Nation postgame show, Episode 1. Stay tuned, Episode 2, after the Kings and Timberwolves on Saturday.
Hi, I'm Leo Biez. Thanks for watching. It means a lot, guys. If you want the latest news in Sacramento, hit the subscribe button below. I'll be waiting.